Hi, my name is Robbie, and I'm with PocketLab. And today we're going to be doing an experiment where we use our PocketLab Voyager with the attachable temperature probe to do some interesting stuff where we measure the temperature change and the pressure change when we have a chemical reaction from vinegar and baking soda. So a classic science experiment that we're going to do, but we're going to add some data to it, some hands-on data collection using our PocketLab Voyager. The first thing we're going to want to do is set up how we're going to do the experiment using these two Ziploc bags. Now, the reason we have these two Ziploc bags is in this bigger one, we're going to have the reaction where we're going to put some vinegar, and then we're going to pour some baking soda in there, and we're going to get this chemical reaction from that. And we're going to use the temperature probe attached to the PocketLab. We're going to have that inside the bag to measure the change in temperature from the reaction. And then we're also going to have, we want the PocketLab Voyager to be inside that bag to measure the change in barometric pressure, see if there's any gases created. But in order to do that without damaging the PocketLab from the liquid, we're going to put the PocketLab inside the smaller Ziploc bag. First, we'll attach the temperature probe, and then put the PocketLab inside smaller Ziploc bag like this, and we're going to get this closed. And you want to kind of get the temperature probe to the side of the bag as possible. So there's this little, it's just sneaking out the end right there, and there's our PocketLab Voyager here. And if you notice, I'm still able to turn the PocketLab on by just pushing the button through the bag. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it off now. Okay, and now I'm going to take some masking tape and just make sure that I seal this little bit of the top of the opening of the Ziploc bag a little bit so that we kind of make sure no liquid gets in there. All right, so that feels pretty sealed. And then again, here's my PocketLab. And then we're going to have this inside the bag like this. Put the temperature probe in there. There we go. Now I'm ready to do my chemical reaction. So we're going to kind of come back to that in a second. Let's look at the lab that we're going to be doing here. Okay, so here's this lab in PocketLab Notebook that we're going to be doing. And so what you want to do first is just kind of read through the procedures and the overview. This lab is going to look at this classic experiment that you may have done, that people do all the time, where you take a volcano, you build a volcano, and then you mix baking soda and vinegar, and that creates this kind of lava-like eruption out of the volcano. A lot of people add food coloring to make it red, to kind of make it look more like lava. But what we're going to really look at is what is really happening when the baking soda and vinegar mix. And that's what we're going to investigate in this lab report. So one thing you can start by doing is just, if you haven't seen that classic experiment, you can watch, here's a video from YouTube, and you could fast forward to the 2-minute and 51-second mark, and then just watch about 30 seconds, and you're going to see this kind of classic experiment. After you do that, you can write down some observations that answer these questions here. So you click answer, and then you write down some answers there for that question. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and do the experiment. And if you have a PocketLab, you can, and some Ziploc bags and the materials, you can do that experiment as well to collect your own data. If you don't have a PocketLab, the data that we're going to collect right now is going to be in the lab report as example data, and you can use that to go ahead and complete the lab. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is connect to my PocketLab and get that set up. So I just need to add a collect data card here. I click connect to PocketLab, and then here I can actually push on the PocketLab through the bag, and you'll see the name of your PocketLab appear in the connection screen. Click pair, and you should see the PocketLab get connected. You'll want to change the graph to measure temperature and barometric pressure. So now I'm measuring two graphs here. And I can actually go ahead and make that full screen so we can just see the whole thing. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is pour a little bit of vinegar into the bag. Okay, so here's the vinegar in the bag. You can see the temperature probes in there, and the PocketLab is over here. So here, the PocketLab is going to be measuring that barometric pressure, which is going to be the graph on top. And then down here, you can see it's measuring temperature. So let's go ahead and add the baking soda. So I'm just going to do a spoonful of baking soda here, about a tablespoon. I'm going to pour that in and then quickly seal up the top here, okay? Now, before I get started, I'm going to go ahead and start recording. Okay, so now I'm recording. I'm going to go ahead and put the temperature and see what's starting to happen. Okay, so I went ahead and stopped the recording, and you can see here's the bag after the reaction, and you can see here here's where I started the reaction, and then right about here is where I finished the reaction. So this is the important part of the data, and if you look here, this is where you're going to see this change in pressure as well. So if you look at the whole graph, back here is kind of after the reaction. I was moving the bag around and things like that. And here, kind of that's where the reaction stopped. But here, this part from about right here to right here, from about 10 seconds to 40 seconds, that's going to be the part of the data that you're going to want to look at. If you don't have a PocketLab Voyager, you can use this example data to complete the rest of the lab. Okay, so I exited full screen mode, so you can see the graphs here. And I'm going to go ahead and just click Save. And this is going to be called example data. So you're going to use that example data to then go ahead and fill in the example data table, answer some questions about that data that you're going to look at, and then you're going to try this experiment on your own where you're going to measure the temperature change from that chemical reaction. If you have a PocketLab and you have a couple Ziploc bags, you can do this exact same experiment. If you have a PocketLab with a temperature probe and you just want to do temperature, you can do that inside. You can do that inside of just a cup, measuring the baking soda and the vinegar, and put the temperature probe in there. Or if you don't have a PocketLab at all, you can just find a thermometer that you might have around the house, so a kitchen thermometer, a glass thermometer, whatever you have, and put that in the baking soda and vinegar when you do the reaction. And then you'll use this data table to just write down the numbers that you see on the thermometer. So all those directions are right there. And then a little explanation about chemical reactions that you can look at. And at the end, you can add a text section to write your conclusions. Okay, so as you're working on this lab, be thinking about what are chemical reactions and how did we maybe see evidence of a chemical reaction in our experiment. So what evidence did we see? We saw the pressure change, we saw the temperature change. So what caused that pressure to change, and how is that related to a chemical reaction? And then what caused that temperature to change, and what does that mean in terms of what type of chemical reaction it was? So be thinking about those things as you work through the rest of your lab and as you draw some conclusions.